Howdy, folks. So today I'm going to finish up talking about ggplot. Last time you saw me in Batman pajamas after a long day of filming. Hopefully today is a little better. So first we're going to talk about aesthetics. So there are numerous options in ggplot, and here are some of the commonly used one. So essentially the aesthetic options are the ones that you want to use across a lot of different pieces of your plot. And these are mapped onto a specific variable in your data. These include color, shape, size, and alpha. Alpha is also known as transparency. All right, so we're going to go through these and keep these in the Penguin data set. As I've highlighted here, we've assigned color to the grouping variable species, which in turn, let me see if I got them. Oh, we do not have mouse capture. Yay. Okay. Can we? Oops. Okay, so sometimes we have mouse. Okay. Cool. Well, it is what it is. So, I'll probably animate it in post if it's not working. Okay, so color. This is a way to universally assign color to a variable. Usually you do a grouping variable. I mean, you could do something continuous if you want, but we're going to start with a grouping variable. In this case, it's species. Next, we can map another variable to shape. And in this case, we've mapped it to island. Here are three islands: Bisco, Dream, and Torgeson. Bisco is assigned to the circle, Dream to the triangle, and Torgeson to the square. You'll notice that now there are two legends, one for species and one for island, as we would expect. You can combine them. You can combine and have multiple things in the aesthetics mapped onto the same variable. So in this case, we've mapped species onto both color and shape, which in turn has condensed our legend into one piece. I tend to encourage folks to think about how their images are going to look in grayscale and not rely entirely on color, because many things are outside your control when you are presenting your findings, including the quality of the bulb in your presentation. So it is helpful to make sure, both from an accessibility and equity standpoint, but also from a what Murphy's Law standpoint. Okay, now we can throw in size, which in turn gives us back to two legends, one for species and one for body mass. As you can see here, size is literally increases the size of each little geome. We can also add alpha. Alpha essentially adds makes it so every single aesthetic becomes more or less transparent as a function of whatever variable. And in this case, it's been mapped onto flipper length. And so the shorter flippers are lighter and the longer flippers are darker. Would I recommend using alpha in this way? Probably not, but at least it is a way to convey information. All right, so what's the difference between mapping and settings? So here, under mapping, these are essentially the same code, except instead of putting size and alpha under mapping, we've set size and alpha in our genome. And you can see the difference in these plots, where size we've set it to 2 universally, and we've set alpha to 0.5. While in these, they're assigned to variables in our data set and are a function of those variables. You'll also notice one other thing, the legend. The legend only shows up under aesthetics. If you want something in the legend, then you put it under aesthetics. If you don't want something in the legend, you put it in the individual setting. So mapping determines the size, alpha, etc. of points based on values of a variable in the data. This goes in AES, aesthetic, versus setting, where you can determine the size and etc. of points and values of variable that are not based on those on your data set. So it goes in geom. And in the previous example, we used geom point, but there are tons of other geoms that we're going to cover. You're going to be sick of them by the time we get there. Okay, next, faceting. So faceting is a way to display different subsets of the data. And this is useful to explore various conditional relationships as well as large data sets and just large amounts of data. To illustrate, here we faceted the relationship between bill length and depth as a product of island and species type. And so as we can see here, there's some interesting things. First of all, the Gentoo penguins are only on Bisco Island, not on Dream or Torgeson, which you wouldn't have seen or really noticed from you could have maybe spotted, but here it makes it a little more clear. The chinstrap penguin was only on Dream Island versus the Adelaide, they're on all the islands. And we can see that really clearly here by faceting. In addition to the absence or presence of a grouping, group by group piece, we can also see if the relationships vary as a function of that grouping. So we can examine the individual scatter plots. So here's the code. It's pretty straightforward. You literally just add on. So after your geom point plus facet grid, and then you break down what you want your grid to be. Here we had it species by island. So there are various ways to facet. I'm going to show you some plots now on the next couple of slides. These plots do not have proper titles, axis labels, etc., because I want you to figure out what's happening. But to be clear, label your plots, both for your audience as well as for future you, because future you is not going to remember. All right, first plot. Yeah, no, I'm literally going to say nothing. So if you want to kind of dive in, feel free. I'll keep this image up for about 30 seconds. You will also notice that it will include grouping variables like missing data if you allow it. I'll probably put on some fun tunes. It's obviously what I'm banging my head to and dancing to. Hopefully I find something that syncs like this. Alright, this is clearly really lovely music. I don't know if it's copyrighted. Here, you can also just do facet wrap by one. You don't have to do both. specify column. Okay, so in summary, facet grid gives you a 2D grid, rows by columns. And you can use dot for a no split if you don't want to split it. Versus facet wrap, which is a one-dimensional ribbon according to the number of rows and columns specified or available in a plotting area. These distinctions are a little subtle, but it's good to know that there are multiple ways to facet wrap. We can also incorporate color into this, as we can see here. Even when we facet wrap, but assign color to species, the color scheme will still show up, which, can be good or bad. Because we probably want to rethink the color scheme for the Gen 2, just because that bright yellow is hard to see against the gray. We can also disable the legend. So you can see here, we have facet and color, but no legend, and that kind of gives you a little more space. So that is wrapping up our tour of ggplot. So I'll see you later. Bye.